Hi everyone, we're here again at Conneaut Lake Veterinary Hospital doing another one of our programs for my dog and me. But today, just like we've done it a few times in the past, we're going to go a little off course here, and we're going to do a presentation for you on birds. We're going to start with a domestic bird, and then we'll have a real surprise for you because we're going to show you some of the wild birds or wildlife birds that are associated with the Tamarack wildlife, correct?
Correct.
And I have with me Dr. Donnie Consla, and before we even bring the birds in, tell me about Tamarack, tell me what Tamarack does, because that's really important. Everybody should know about that and support them.
So they're a nonprofit organization, and they are a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. So they do most species of birds, kind of specializing in raptors.
In what?
Raptors, birds of prey.
Oh, okay.
They do possums and rabies vector species, so like raccoons, foxes, things like that. They refer to other places who have additional certification to deal with those.
So Tamarack does primarily birds?
Birds, possums, waterfowl, you know, all sorts of birds.
How do they get them?
So, you know, somebody...
That's what's important.
Yeah, somebody's out in the woods or wherever, and they see an injured animal, and they call Tamarack, and Tamarack has dispatchers that they can send out to help collect the bird safely, especially, you know, for some of these larger birds of prey like the eagles and things like that. That can be pretty dangerous to handle. They have trained personnel to go out and capture those birds safely. You can also worsen the bird's condition. If you're trying to capture it and it's fluttering away,
sure.
They can get damage to their muscle and organs from too much stress, or, you know, injure a wing or something, damage feathers, things like that.
Where is Tamarack?
They are in Sagertown on Stall Road. It's right off 86 on one side and 19 and 6 on the other.
And how large of a facility? How many birds would they have there at a time?
It varies depending on the season. You know, spring, obviously, they get a lot more because you have all the birds hatching and things like that. But usually, you know, several dozen, I would say, at the high influx times. And it's a pretty good-sized facility. They have one of the few, you know, large flight buildings in the state and certainly in our area. So for the larger birds, once they are getting their strength back and have been treating, you know, they need to exercise and fly. So this is a, you know, several hundred-yard long building where these birds can do full laps back and forth to train. And then, you know, several smaller outdoor enclosures, an intensive care unit on the inside, a hospitalization ward. So it's a pretty impressive facility, and they do a lot of good work, not just with the wildlife, which is important for ecosystems, but also in public education and public health.
Okay, so they are nonprofit.
Correct.
They will certainly be more than happy to take donations if anybody wants to give a donation, because they are a nonprofit.
Right.
I'm sure they're a 501c3.
Yep, correct. And
so
donations can be, you know, monetary or even items. So like gently used towels, pillowcases, sheets. They use a lot of for lining the bottom of enclosures or handling birds. Nothing red or orange generally.
Why is that?
The birds of prey, they think it's like blood, so it gets them excited.
They
can use that for other stuff, but and then if you go on their website or their Facebook, they usually have a list posted of, you know, things they need: laundry detergent, bleach, whatever it may be, things that they're in need of.
Okay, so besides knowing that right now, because you've watched this program, your responsibility is to tell other people about this, because Tamarack is important, located near Sagertown. Nonprofit, 501c3, will take donations. Go on their website, probably tamarackwildlife.com.
I believe it's tamarackwildlife.org, I think.
.org, possibly.
And then they do have a very active Facebook page where they post, you know, patients, how they're doing, releases, their events. They do a really nice open house every fall, and they usually have some releases that day where you can come and tour the facilities, you know, just learn more about all that they do, which is really a lot. And then they also do the education program, so they go to schools, nursing homes, Boy Scout, Girl Scout events. I mean, anything you could think of where you'd like to have ambassador education birds. which are non-releasable birds that they've trained to stand on the glove and just to educate people. And those presentations are really impressive as well.
Now, what's your association with Tamarack?
So I am one of their sponsoring vets, since I do a lot of work with avian and exotics. That has kind of tied me in. I started there when I was at Allegheny College. I was a work study there, and since I was a technician here, I had a skill set that was a little more advanced than some of the other work studies, so I got in that way. And then after veterinary school, when I came back, I wanted to be involved. And so we usually see a couple of patients a week from them, whether it's x-rays, just a second opinion, you know, more in-depth ophthalmic exam or something like that. We do a lot with their eagles. They get many of the eagles that are injured in the state. So this year, I believe they had 8 total this summer. Normally they have 2. They were, I think, all lead poisoning. And so we do a lot with that, you know, taking x-rays. We did 2 gastric lavage procedures. Where
there?
Here.
So a lot of the surgeries you bring here?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's quite interesting. Now, so they're birds that people cannot own?
Correct.
What's that called?
I mean, it depends on what it is, but raptors are the birds of prey.
Okay.
But you can't own a wild bird.
I can't own an eagle. I can't own an owl.
No, not unless you're like a zoo, a wildlife education facility, or something like that. And even then, you have to get permits through a variety of government organizations.
Okay, so what are the type of birds that people generally own?
So for pet birds, we tend to see things more in like the parrot variety. Citizen is the very fancy word for that group of birds. Citizen, yeah. And it starts with a P, so it looks really weird.
So they're birds that people have as pets.
Right, and those are, the citizens are parrot-like birds. So think, you know, your parakeets, cockatiels, all your different types of parrots, conures, eclectus, cockatoos, macaws, all that sort of stuff.
What about a parakeet?
Parakeet.
Do you get parakeets in here?
Yep.
Do you get canaries?
Yep.
What else? What else is small?
So the other common ones are like your little like passerine songbirds, like finches, parakeets, stuff like that.
And people own them. And people bring them in here. Why? I had a parakeet one time. I put it in a cage. I cleaned its cage. I gave it food and water, but I never even would have thought of taking it to a vet.
So that's a good point. So a lot more people are starting to own exotic pets, especially birds. More, you know, housing places are amenable to having them there versus dogs and cats. They're a little less work in some degree. You know, you don't have to, you know, take it out, you know, every few hours to go to the bathroom. But what a lot of people don't know is it's just as important to have veterinary care for those animals. So if you think about a dog or a cat, you take it to the vet once or twice a year, depending on its age. You should do the same thing for your bird.
No, wait. You mean people actually that have parakeets and finches and canaries and that honestly should be bringing their bird to see a veterinarian?
It's just like a dog.
Like a checkup.
Like, you know, think of how many things we catch on routine exams that tip us to look for something so we can intervene early. It's the same thing with birds or any other exotic
Do you
animal.
have to sedate them? Or do you just put their hand
Not
and
usually.
grab them out of the cage and then you hold them? And while you're holding them, you examine them?
Correct.
I think you're losing your mind here. This is really way out there. Okay, so, and you do that, and are you one of the only vets in the area that does that?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, well that's good. You're also one of the few veterinarians, well I know that Greener Pastures, and I certainly have a good relationship with Greener Pastures, they have an emergency service for their clients, but let's just go off course just for a minute since we're talking about the crazy things that you do, Dr. Consla. Tell me about the emergency program here. That's really important.
Yeah.
We might as well slide that in.
We're pretty much 24/7 emergencies. We're not a 24-hour facility, so that's a distinction. So if you're a pet, whether it's a bird, dog, ferret, whatever, if you call, you'll get our answering service and get to talk to one of the doctors and then can set up an appointment if necessary. We're not here 24 hours, which is pretty normal for hospitals in a rural setting like this. So, you know, we come in, treat, whatever, and then at some point everybody's going to go home. So I always like to stress that. to
Okay,
people.
but there are times where they would come here and then you would move them maybe to Erie, which has 24-hour.
Right. So
someone
if
standing
there's a
there.
situation where, you know, maybe a dog needs to be monitored like hourly or something, I'll usually say, like, look, ideally they would have, you know, 24-hour monitoring so that this can be checked. I can't guarantee, you know, that this might not flare up again, even
the
though
middle of the night.
even though we've started all the right medicines and things like that.
And a person who's listening to us right now will also know that they do not have to be a client of Conneaut Lake Veterinary Service or hospital to call you for emergency service anytime, day or night.
Yep. The only time we're not on is major holidays. To give our staff a break, we do refer to the emergency hospital at Erie. But
Okay. Well, now we talked about that. Let's go back. Now we're back. We're back to the birds. Okay, let's talk about the birds. So what are we seeing today?
So we're going to start off with a cockatiel.
Okay.
His name is Pepper. He's owned by one of our technicians, Amber. You might remember her. She has the bunnies that we did for our bunny program.
The bunnies, yes. She has a whole menagerie.
She does, yeah.
Is she going to be here when she's going to bring
I
Pepper
think
in?
she's in a procedure right now, so
Who is going to hold Pepper?
You. No, I'm kidding. I'll hold him.
Well, okay. So what do I have to know about having a bird?
Yeah, so with exotic animals in general, the majority of the problems that we see are husbandry related. So that means the environment that they're in, the food they're getting, the things that you as the owner do to the pet are often not correct. And that's just more of an education problem. People just don't know, you know, the right things to do. You have to remember that all of these domestic species, they're not from like Pennsylvania area, you know. They were caught in the Amazon at some point, you know, or wherever, and bred, you know, to be domesticated, and then, you know, generations later you see them at the pet store. So they require different environmental qualities and different food qualities than what, you know, a native bird around here would eat. So that's where a lot of the problems that I see come into play. So when you think of a bird, what food does it get?
I thought
what do
of
they
Harsh
eat?
Mountain food. Seed, I think that's what I
Seeds.
gave them, seeds.
Exactly.
I mean, it was easy then. Years ago when I had a parakeet, it was simple. You went and bought a box of seed, put it in the little dish in the cage, gave it clean water, put some sandpaper stuff on the perches, and cleaned the paper in the bottom of the cage.
Right. And
How am I doing? That was my 4 important things: water, food, the perch, and the bottom of the cage.
Yeah, so those are all the right areas, and then you can tweak those things a little bit. So seed diet is the biggest problem that I see. You can think of seeds to these parrot-like birds or parakeets as basically like a human eating McDonald's French fries every day. They're very high in fat. They taste really good, but they have about 0 nutritional value. So we often see vitamin deficiencies. We can see different masses arise. And birds will see, in some of the smaller ones, like the budgies, the little like blue-green parakeets, they can actually have...
What do you call them? Budgies?
Budgies. They can have a higher incidence of fatty tumors if they're on a poor diet like that. And just like anything, if it has a poor diet, it's going to be more susceptible to infectious disease and organ failure, liver, kidney failure, all sorts of things like that.
Okay, hold time out. Where do I get this stuff?
Right. So the ideal diet is a pelleted diet. And
Pelleted.
And you can think of that as like a dog or a cat food.
Okay.
Somebody's gone through the effort of making sure that it's balanced nutritionally and make it in the cute little pieces of kibble. For birds, it just comes in these little pellets. Remember with the rabbits, they had the little pellets that we supplemented the diet with? Very similar to that.
So you have to supplement the bird's diet.
You just want to feed pellets.
Oh, just feed pellets.
Straight pellets. And they make it for each species. So if you think about dogs or cats, we have different breeds, but they're all like the same species, right? They're all relatively the same. Sure, there's breed differences, you know, that we won't get into, but they're all relatively the same. When we're talking about these birds, they're all different species. So even though they're all a bird, it'd be like comparing like a dog to like a coyote.
Okay,
you know,
or a wolf or something like
right.
that. Okay, all
so
right, gotcha.
even though they're kind of similar looking, they have different properties. So like when we do blood work on a bird.
You do blood work on a bird?
Yes. We'll get into that later.
Oh,
but
heavens.
we like with our dogs and cats, all of the values are preset into the machine because they're all the same species.
Sure.
You can't do that with a bird. If I have a cockatiel and a cockatoo and a macaw, I have to go and look in a book and look at the different normal ranges for blood values because they're different for each species of bird. So when you're picking out your food, you'll notice there's budgie pellets, cockatiel pellets, cockatoo pellets, macaw pellets, conure pellets, so on and so forth.
Do they have things like that, honestly, at a Walmart or a place like that? Or is it more like a pet store, or is it better online?
Probably more a pet store. There are certain brands that are really good. So Lefebvre's, Oxbow, Harrison's, those are some of the really good manufacturers. They kind of specialize in, bird foods or exotic foods and go to good efforts to make sure that they're well balanced nutritionally.
I'm sticking with the dogs and cats at this stage. It's a lot easier.
You think so?
Well, I haven't done fish yet either, but you don't do fish, do you?
No, I do not do fish.
Okay, well,
I did a little in vet school, but that's
we're digressing. We're going back to this. Okay, back to the birds.
So
we feed them, and what else do we have to worry about?
So the food is the one big thing.
Okay.
The other big thing is the environment. And so that is everything from the temperature and humidity to the lighting and the amount of space that they have. Wow. Another problem we see a lot is birds that are bored. So they actually need, exercise and stimulation. Birds are really smart. So they require a lot of mental stimulation. So those really high energy dogs like Border Collies, Australian Shepherds, German Shepherds, if you don't give them something to do, you're pulling your hair out.
The bird needs stimulation.
Birds are the same way.
Bored. Oh,
and so that can be you interacting with them, just having them on your shoulder, letting them fly around the house. They can be potty trained.
I did that. I let mine fly around the house when I had them.
Enrichment items, so things for them to pick at,
toys,
tear apart.
Okay. Oh, gotcha.
Things like that. And so, at first people are like, oh, that's so different. That's a lot of work. Well, I'm like, that's not any different for me than my little pit bull mix. I have to give him a Kong with peanut butter. We have to go for a walk. He has to have his Nylabone. Otherwise, I'm sitting there banging my head off the counter because he's watching me, driving me nuts.
Yes.
And so it's the same, for birds. Now, some birds are going to be different and require more attention than others, but some sort of enrichment and stimulation is key.
Okay, so food, stimulation, environment.
We also want to make sure temperatures are accurate. Okay. Remember, if this bird is from, some sort of jungle environment and you put it in a 65-degree, dark, dry room, it's going to have, respiratory problems and different things like that. So
can't have a draft either.
Right.
Can do that.
We also think about the enclosure itself, making sure it's big enough if they're not flying around, and making sure there's different types of perches, both in size and the substrate. And that's the substrate, what it's made of.
Okay. So you keep on throwing these words out. You've thrown out, I should have brought a dictionary. You've thrown out about 10 different words to me. Okay, substrate. Gotcha.
So birds have very poor circulation to their feet, and you'll like this term. So they're prone to bumblefoot. And that's where it's basically any inflammation of the foot, and they can get swollen, and it looks like they got stung by a bee on the bottom of their foot. There's a little hot spot, and it's swollen. Yeah, if it progresses far enough. And so if we exercise them, if we have different shapes of perches, different textures of perches, that makes them move their feet more and keeps the circulation going.
Prior to you and people getting into birds, what did we do with them? We just kept them, they probably didn't live very long.
Put them in a cage, gave them seed.
Gave them seed, water. I told you I did the bottom of the cage and stuff like that. I never even thought about that. But all those things now are important, and probably maybe many birds probably didn't live real long because they had so many variables that the owners really weren't taking care of.
Right. Another good point is most of these birds live a long time. I mean, if you're talking about a macaw, that's 90 years,
90.
Yeah, so some of these birds actually outlive their owners.
Who takes them then?
That's the problem, because they'll often get attached to one person, and they see it as their, like their mate, their companion. And so if their mate or companion, the owner dies, it can be hard to get them attached to a new person sometimes.
Oh my heavens. How long do parakeets and canaries in that live?
Less, like less than 10 years.
How about a cockatiel?
A cockatiel can be like up to 20. I've seen some that are 22.
But the macaw?
Yeah.
What is that, a parrot?
Those are the real big parrots.
Oh, the real
like
big
the
parrot.
Beaks like that big.
That's the real big parrots. Okay, well, see, there's another word.
And so, I mean, that's something to think about. Not to be depressing, but if you're, 70 years old, maybe, get one that is smaller if you're going to have a bird.
Well, it's like having pets, any kind of pets.
Yeah.
Whenever something happens, you become ill or you pass away, who's going to take the pets?
Right, yeah.
Well, with a pet that's living to be 90, you might have to displace that one 2-3 times.
Right.
Oh, wow.
It's always helpful for us when you're coming in, especially if it's a bigger bird, to take pictures of their enclosure so we can see what the perching looks like.
Oh, okay.
And we always like there to be some sort of like fresh sample. So if you have like a travel cage, or the bird is small enough that you can bring its actual cage in, don't clean the cage that day. We want to see what the mutes look like. Mute is
there we go again.
The combination. So a little fun fact for you: birds just have one opening where everything comes out of.
Right, I knew that.
Urine, feces, eggs, sperm, whatever. It's all coming out of the same hole.
Oh wow.
So the mute is the feces, the urine, and then the urate, which is like that white pasty material.
Whenever it hits my car.
Exactly.
Whenever I'm driving down the road and I get splattered by that. Okay.
And so if you're thinking about a lot of these birds, the small ones are, can be very easily stressed. Sometimes we can't get a blood sample if they're so small. So just being able to see, the mutes, how they're chewing their food, what might be passing in the stool, can give us a lot of information about what's going on.
Are you going to tell me where we take a blood sample from a bird?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to show me, or we're not going to do it today?
We won't do it today.
Now, where do you take the blood sample?
So there's a few different locations, and it depends on the size of the bird, often which one you'll use. So they do have a leg or a vein down by their ankle. Unless it's a very big bird, I usually don't even go for that one. But like eagles, turkey vultures, some of the large birds we get in from Tamarack, we can use. More often, I'm going for either the wing vein or the basilic vein. And it's right on the inside of the elbow here, or the jugular vein on the neck.
What about people that get birds and intentionally, I could really be way out on this, intentionally clip their wings? Do people do that?
Yep. We do it here. We do beak trims, nail trims, wing trims. And
but they do it so that the bird will never be able to fly.
Are you talking about clipping the feathers?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's very common practice because it's kind of like having a dog not on a leash that doesn't listen to commands. If you let it outside, it's going to take off after a squirrel or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So clipping the wings, if done right, can be a way so that they can't fly off and get injured by a wild animal.
Can they still fly?
It depends on how short you clip them. So I always ask people when they come in, how much flight do you want the bird to have? Some people just want it so it can't fly, across the room. Some people want them to be able to glide down, and that's the most common, especially if the bird's going to be out and about the house. You don't want them to jump off a perch and just drop like a rock. If it's a bird that's in the cage all the time, sometimes they'll have me go a little bit shorter, but it's usually owner preference. Somewhere in the middle there is probably best, so they can still, get around a little bit, but not escape. Nail trims are very similar to a dog or a cat. They grow, they've got the quick inside. The only difference is birds have a much higher blood pressure and a much less blood volume. So if you go too short and hit that little quick in there and it bleeds, a small bird like a finch or a budgie could actually bleed out and die. So just always be wary of that. And then the beak trims, the beak, the top part of the beak is nail-like, so it grows continuously as well. Most birds, if they have proper enrichment and proper diet, we'll keep it worn down to a proper length. Some birds, even if they have all those things, maybe just don't chew as much or whatever, and it needs to be trimmed down too. So we use clippers and a Dremel to wear down the beak and get it shaped.
You use a Dremel for it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else do we have to know before we meet this cockatiel?
When you call in, like I said, we would like to have pictures of the enclosure and know what the environment's like, the average temperature, the average photo period, the amount of light that it gets, what type of food is it getting, if it's getting seed, which seeds, if it's on a pelleted diet, what brand, when did you last get the bag, how often do you clean the cage, all these sorts of things. Because the husbandry is often where a lot of the issues stem from. Sometimes just getting that information can make it so we don't have to do quite as much testing.
Right.
But those are the things that we usually need to know.
Okay, well, who are we meeting first?
All right, I'm going to go get Pepper, the cockatiel.
Okay.
So we'll take a break, and I'll be right back.
All right, sounds good. Who is this?
Okay, this is Pepper. He's a cockatiel. An adult, and he's here for us to examine today.
He's very pretty.
Yes. Now you'll notice how I'm holding him. It's also going to vary by the species. So I basically am holding his neck and then just kind of supporting the rest. Now this is something special we can do with birds because they have complete tracheal rings. So the cartilage of the trachea is a whole circle. Whereas with people, dogs, cats, it's only a partial circle. So when you squeeze it, it can collapse. You can't do that with a bird.
Okay.
So with these parrot-like birds, their main means of defense is their beak. So we want to have the most control over the beak.
Will he bite you?
I mean, he won't because he's pretty nice.
Will they?
He could, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Now, a bird like this, it's going to hurt, might draw a little blood, it's not bad. If it's a macaw, it'll snip your finger off. So you always have to be holding,
Take
properly.
your finger off. Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
Can you get this, Mr. Cameraman?
So, I mean, he's doing very good. But basically for our exam, we're going through all the body systems and looking at everything. So we're looking at the nares, there's no discharge there. We can look in his mouth and look in the back. Sometimes you can tell if they're having chronic respiratory issues or vitamin A deficiency by some of the structures in the back of the mouth.
Do you need certain tools to do this, or can you do it just by...
Yeah, no, pretty much a stethoscope, your eyes, and a light source. You can see everything you need.
How many times is his heartbeat?
Fast.
Really fast?
So for like the record,
That's right.
I would say if you feel right there, it's just like brrr.
Oh yes, this is like one constant.
Yeah, so
time.
I would say just greater than 300,
That's what they used to say whenever you were doing that in college, compare the elephant to the bird and what the difference in the heartbeat.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we check the eyes. We can look at his ears, which is just a little hole.
Can you see that there? Okay.
And then a little orange patch there. You see that little hole there?
Are all cockatiels this color?
No, there's different variants.
Okay.
We check their body condition, so if you feel right there, do you feel that kind of spine?
Yeah.
That's the keel or the breastbone.
Really? It's down awfully far.
And then if you feel off to the left or right of it, feel how it's a little soft?
Yes.
Those are the pectoral muscles.
Oh, wow.
So these muscles on us, and that's what they use for the downstroke during flight. So by feeling those muscles, you can tell the body condition of the bird. So this is good. I can feel the keel, and then off of it is that breast tissue. It's not, concave like he's underweight, and it's not bulged up like he's got too much extra weight. We can feel their abdomen. So if you want to feel right there, you'll feel there's like a little hole.
Oh my heavens.
And so if there's a mass in there or fluid in there, that will be pushed out. For a cockatiel, you should be able to get your index finger in that pelvic space there. We can check the vent, and that's the one hole.
The one hole.
Where everything comes out.
His feathers are so pretty.
And so there we're looking, is there any staining, from problems with the mutes? Are there any masses? Anything like that.
How much do they weigh?
He probably weighs like 100, 120 grams.
Which is a pound?
No, a pound is, 450 grams, so I don't know, small.
Yeah,
I can't do that
I
math
was just
right now.
curious. I mean, I just, you know.
We check their wings.
Mm-hmm.
So his feathers aren't really clipped all that much. You can see there's a couple there that she has clipped, but for the most part they're not. So these long feathers there that we're seeing are the primary flight feathers. And then we look at the bottom of the feet, and his are, you know, nice and pink. There's no redness.
What was it called? A
bumblefoot.
Bumblefoot.
Yeah.
You do not have a bumblefoot.
There's no sore spots. Huh. He's a very nice bird. You want to hold him like this?
I do. Come on. Oh, he's not gonna let me. Is he gonna let me?
He might not trust you.
Let's see if I can get him off your shoulder. No, he's like, yes. Oh, I got him. Oh, I got him. Yes. Hello. Now, why won't he take off and fly?
He's Amber just handles him a lot, so he's out. She does a very good job at, you know, interacting with him.
Oh, yes.
Exercising him, and so he's very used to being handled. So you could see even when I was holding him to, you know, in the exam position,
yeah.
he wasn't even like that offended about it.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time. Yes. Oh, he's very pretty.
Yeah. So
okay, who's next on our agenda?
So next, we're going to get into some of our wild birds that we have. So I'll be right back with them.
Okay. Oh, he's just a baby.
Nope. Full-grown adult.
Oh, he looks very small.
It's the smallest owl in Pennsylvania, the northern SawWhet Owl.
Oh, he's very pretty. Now, how old do you think he is? We don't know.
It's hard to say, just an adult.
Is he a resident at Tamarack?
This is a patient that they're currently treating. You can see he's got something going on with one of his eyes there. The yellow eye is normal, and then the orange one,
I see that.
There's a little something going on. So he's here to be checked out today, but they said that he could be a movie star for the day.
Oh, he's very pretty. And he doesn't have a name, of course.
No.
Oh.
No.
Now, he was just taken from the wild.
Yep.
Someone found him,
Yep.
called Tamarack. Tamarack went and got him.
Mm-hmm.
How long has he been at Tamarack?
I think just a few days.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you'll notice I'm not really holding his head. What I'm holding on these guys, the birds of prey, is their feet. So see how I have each of his feet?
You have the feet in between your fingers.
Right. Because
now
this little guy is really not going to do any damage to us, but if this were like a great horned owl or an eagle, those could, you know, break bones. The feet, or cause, you know, serious puncture wounds. So you always want to have really good control of the feet.
Now, what is this one called again?
A northern SawWhet Owl. Because
SawWhet Owl, and he's the...
W-H-E-T, their call sounds like somebody whetting a saw.
And you said they're the smallest owl?
In Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. It was thought for a while that they were almost extinct because nobody ever saw them. So some scientists did some studies where they put up mist nets and for something else, and they kept catching these guys. So they learned that they're just so small and secretive that they're actually around. We just hardly ever see them.
Do they live in a nest? They make a nest?
A nest or like a burrow, like a hole like in a tree or something like that.
A hole in a tree or a nest or something like that. And how long? We don't know how long they live. We don't have any that have been banded that they can tell.
Yeah, I mean, there's some in the, I don't know the exact numbers. In the wild, it's usually about 50% less. So if you look at like a red-tailed hawk, I think in the wild they're like 15, 20 years.
Really?
In captivity, it's like 40, 50 years.
It'd be hard to see him if he was next to the bark of a tree.
And their flight is, you know, silent. They've got some different things to their wings. It's tough to see, but if you look at his feathers, they're actually barbed. You can get close. He won't bite you.
Oh, I'm not worried about that.
See how the tips of the feathers are barbed?
Wow.
Down there. And that makes a silent flight along with some other things that they do.
And he's a bird of prey.
Yep.
And what does he eat?
So insects, small mammals, you know, so like a mouse.
A mouse. He could pick up a mouse.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, he's very pretty.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. And this is tell us one more time what he is.
A northern SawWhet Owl.
Northern SawWhet Owl. Oh, look at that face.
And as far as the exam goes for any of these wild birds, it's the same. We're going through all the body systems, listening to the heart and lungs, looking at the feet. Of course, you have to be a little more careful since they've got these sharp talons. Looking in the mouth and the ears, all that sort of stuff.
I'm sure they don't hibernate, but in the winter, they tend to be somewhat not out as much?
They actually, this owl and the other one we're going to look at, a screech owl, have some interesting behaviors, and they'll actually still do this when they're at the center. So Tamarack used to have a SawWhet Owl as an ambassador education bird, and when I was there, you would feed it its mouse, it would eat half of it, and then it would leave the other half. And this would happen in the winter, and then the next day it would eat the other half. And so if you observe these small owls out in the wild, what they'll do is, because it's winter, food is more scarce, they got to conserve things a little bit, they'll eat half the meal, and then they'll actually take it to their nest, burrow, whatever, and thaw it out the next day by sitting on it like an egg. And they thaw it out, and then they've got another meal ready.
Oh,
so it's like, you know, you made your whatever for dinner, and then you've got leftovers for the next day.
Sure, leftovers. Mm-hmm. Oh, unbelievable. Okay, who's next?
Next we have an eastern screech owl that I'll get for us.
Okay. Can you think of anything else you need to tell us about this one? He sure is cute.
I think that's all.
He's not very big at all.
No, they're very small.
Smallest owl in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he turns his head all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
He can do that same thing that the cockatiel can? He can turn his head all the way?
They've got extra vertebrae, so they can turn their head much further around.
Oh, look at him.
So it's like backwards there.
And around it comes again.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my heavens. Okay.
All right, we'll be right back.
All right, sounds like a plan. Now, what is this, a screech owl?
This is an eastern screech owl.
And are they all over the eastern United States?
Yep, there's the eastern screech owl, the western screech owl, there's a whiskered screech owl. The eastern ones, which is what we have around here, come in two different colors. So this one is a gray molt.
Oh, and he looks an awful lot like the one we just had here. Oh, no, not in the face he doesn't.
Right, and there's a red face too. They've got these little ear tufts. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
That they'll put straight up sometimes. And it's super cute. Now, this guy, if you look at his feathering, doesn't it kind of look like the bark of a tree?
You'd never see him.
And so they blend in, and they'll actually get like real stiff and make themselves skinny to look like a tree branch if they're trying to hide.
And is he live at Tamarack, or is he there as a patient?
This one is another patient. His other wing is wrapped. See how he's got like a little splint on there?
Oh,
so he hurt his shoulder. He got hit by a car. So he's got that on there to keep everything stable. It's like a person having their arm in a sling.
Now, how long will it take for that to heal?
It varies. Birds' bone injuries heal a lot faster than mammals, so typically around 2 to 3 weeks we're kind of reassessing and seeing where they're at.
Will he recover?
Probably, yeah.
If he doesn't, what happens to him?
Then they usually try and place them at, not necessarily there, because they have a pretty full crew of ambassador
Pittsburgh
birds.
Aviary, any place like that.
Zoos, other educational facilities, they do their best to try and place them, if possible. Now you can see his feet still aren't very big, but they're a little bit bigger than our last contestant.
Does the aviary in Pittsburgh still have, oh yeah, they are bigger than the other one.
Mm-hmm.
Does the aviary in Pittsburgh still have a lot of birds? Is that still in operation?
Yeah, I believe it is.
I used to go there when I was young because I lived in Pittsburgh, and I used to love going in there.
Yeah. And he's got, like a little scab on his nose from where he was hit.
Aw. And someone stopped after they hit him, called Tamarack, and they came and got him.
Yep. Now these ones, I mean, they can still injure you, they can still foot you and get a puncture wound, but if you have like a blanket or a towel or something, you could, put it over and capture it as long as you feel comfortable and it's not stressing the bird out too much.
And he's a screech owl.
An eastern screech owl, yep. They're my favorite.
Why are they your favorite?
I don't know, they're just cool. Look at him.
But he's not making any screeching sound.
No, they usually do it, obviously when they're out in the wild.
Yeah.
And they're like during mating season.
Now he chose to put that wing out like that.
Yeah, that wasn't me. But I mean, look at that wingspan. You know,
it's gorgeous.
he's so tiny, and that's, you know.
Look how beautiful that is.
And he's
we
got
have no idea how old he is?
Just an adult, yeah.
If someone saved you after they tried to, you got in the way of the car, that's not a good decision to get in the way of a car. Oh, I think it's wonderful that someone called Tamarack and is getting a second
and again,
chance
these
here.
guys are, you know, eating mice and things like that, so wonderful natural pest control. Bugs like grasshoppers and stuff, things like that that can be pests, these guys will take care of.
Do you give them a dead mouse or a live mouse?
Dead.
Okay. I thought I'd ask that.
Yeah, depending on where they're at, you know, if they're, you know, pretty healthy, it'll be dead, but it'll have all the fur and it'll be in one whole piece. If they are not doing well, sometimes we have to skin the mice or chop them up into smaller pieces.
For them. Cool.
He gave us a little present here.
Oh, well, that's special.
So birds of prey, after they eat their meal,
That looks like a heart.
they cast a pellet.
Oh.
And so this is like the fur and the bones of his last meal that would be hard to digest.
So he
and
brings
they,
that back
they
up
spit
after
that
that.
back up.
Almost like a hairball in a cat.
Yep.
Same
So you can
idea.
go looking through the woods, look at the base of trees, and you can actually find...
Oh my God, it's hard.
Yeah, like most of the moisture and stuff is out of it. And you can find those. And I remember in grade school, I think it was 5th grade, we actually got a bunch of these and dissected them, and then you can put the skeleton of the mouse back together. Or whatever they last ate.
Occasionally you go off on the deep end, and that would be a deep end.
That'd be a moment.
That's a deep end trip. That's interesting, and that is very, very hard. And that he brings that up whole like that.
Yep.
Oh, amazing! And how often do they do that? Every time they eat?
Yep.
Wow. Okay, who's next?
All right, our final bird is a turkey vulture.
A turkey vulture.
So I will be back with him.
Okay, sounds like a plan there.
So this is a turkey vulture, and you see them flying around all over, big black bird, you know,
I often
gliding
think
through
it's
the
a hawk
air.
or an eagle when I look up, and then all of a sudden, when they get closer, you can see that it's really a turkey vulture.
Right. He's got a tail guard on, so Tamarack will put that on, especially a lot of their bigger birds like the eagles and the hawks and these guys, to protect the tail feathers. Because if they're at a point in their treatment where they can't be in a big enclosure and they need to be in a smaller space, they can bash those tail feathers on the wall. And if they damage those tail feathers, then they can't fly well. And so they put this on to help keep them protected.
Okay, here's my question. Why would anybody, honestly, I just asked you this a minute ago before we were on film, but why would you really save that?
Well, they play a huge role in our ecosystem.
Well, you better talk me into it, because if I wouldn't be caring about them. I don't like them, and I don't like what they do.
So they eat, they're a vulture, they eat dead stuff that's rotting, decomposing, and that food source isn't going to really do nobody else is going to mess with it. And they've adapted to be able to eat things. I mean, they can eat like a rabies virus and it won't affect them at all. They've got different bacteria and enzymes and acids and stuff in their GI tract. They have a very unique smell. I don't know if you've picked up on that yet.
Yes.
And,
so it does have a unique smell.
And so, you know, they can break down all that bad stuff, basically.
I don't even like his face.
Oh, he's cute.
Oh, I don't think he's cute
He's
at
young,
all.
so his face is still a little black. When they get adult, it's red.
Really?
Yeah, for the turkey vultures. Most birds have a very poor sense of smell.
He's going to get you.
These guys have a very good sense of smell. And so that's another special thing. They can, you know, smell things from really
way up high,
way up high.
It's amazing how quickly they show up when something happens.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like they have radar.
They have
the squirrel gets hit by a car and they're there almost immediately.
Yeah, they have some special things that they do to survive. When they're startled, they will vomit, which would certainly scare me away if I were a predator. They will poop on their legs to cool off, which would probably also scare me away. And you'll often see them in the morning, since they're all black, their feathers. They'll stretch their wings out and kind of get radiant heat to get their body temperature up in the morning.
Wow.
Huh. So he had a broken bone at some point that didn't heal well. So he's actually going to be going to some sort of education facility. Now, in those types of places, they're all still very handy because you have a lot of your other animals that maybe don't eat all of their food. And so now you have kind of a natural way of getting rid of that versus just
he's
tossing
a garbage
it.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he worked for rubbish collection. No, I don't think he's pretty at all.
They're cute.
No,
they're like so ugly, they're cute.
Their face is not even, nothing cute about them at all.
Well, I'm going to put him back and then we can wrap up.
Okay, well that's a great plan.
Okay.
No great loss with him. You bring the little owls back, but not that one. Okay, hurry up, put them away and we'll finish up on, see if there's any other questions we can think of. Okay, so we saw the cockatiel, we saw the small owl, that's the smallest one in Pennsylvania, we saw the screech owl, and we saw the turkey buzzard.
Yep, turkey vulture.
Turkey vulture. Turkey buzzard, same thing?
No. I don't know if there is a turkey buzzard.
Oh,
maybe they're the same thing, I don't know.
I don't even know. So let's review. So let's go back real quick and talk about that you do the services of the domestic pets or the domestic birds if anybody has some. So you do that.
Yep, routine care, important at least once a year, and then certainly if they're sick, we're happy to see them as well.
Okay, and then we also talked about Tamarack, which is in Sagertown, the nonprofit, the 501c3, where people can make donations and they can help out as far as the care of the birds. And we talked about that being something that's extremely important.
And their educational programs.
Right, educational programs. So if anybody has a Girl Scouts or something like that, they would come with these animals and show them to the Girl Scouts. Maybe if they're working on a badge or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they go to schools all the time. Even adult organizations will have them come in just to talk about ecology, conservancy, wildlife, what to do if you see something, when not to do something is also very important. All sorts of things like that.
I'm shocked you didn't have any hawks.
But they just didn't have any that were, well enough in their treatment. So
red-tailed hawk. We have a lot of those up at our place.
Yeah.
What's the biggest bird you ever worked on?
A bald eagle or a golden eagle.
Really? What's the difference between a golden and a
the golden eagles are more out west, and they are a little bit larger.
Okay.
A lot of people around here often confuse juvenile bald eagles with golden eagles. The juvenile bald eagle doesn't have the white head or the white tail yet, and they have longer flight feathers. It's kind of like training wheels on a bike. They're still a little clumsy. Wow. And so they're often confused, but we don't have any golden eagles around here. Okay, well, thanks a lot. Very educational. For me, I'm not a bird lover. I mean, I was into the parakeets and the canaries whenever I was growing up, so I learned an awful lot, and that guy in there, I really don't care a whole lot about him. But he's important.
I know, because he's the garbage man, and the garbage man is important at my house, and the garbage man is important among wildlife in today's society. Okay, thanks very much. Join us again if you have any questions. Feel free to call Dr. Consla down here at Conneaut Lake Vet. If you have any questions about the care of your birds, you can certainly give him a call. And if you have any suggestions as to what you would like to see us do in our programs, then you can also give us a call about that. I was saying a little bit earlier whenever I was talking to some of the staff down here, our plan is to start presenting in our programs breed-specific things where we will have certain breeds that we'll be talking about as far as the dogs are concerned. So we'll lean back towards the dogs a little bit. Then we'll talk about something else to have you do. Okay, thanks very much.